afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and welcome to yet another fan-written Q&A. This time, the person who wrote the questions is the wonderful Isabel's Psychology Life Hacks, because goodness knows the two of us can't have enough collabs on our respective channels. Soon we'll have to be like those YouTube gamers, where it's like every other video, Peanut Butter Gamer or Wolf Den is in a collab with someone else, and then Miss Click Gaming has to be in it. It's so hilarious how popular YouTubers work, isn't it? But at this point, neither of us are as popular as them, so we can afford a little bit of promoting each other, don't you think? Anyway, her questions are much more involved and much more thought-provoking, so hopefully I won't do a whole lot of ums and uhs and make this video at least partially interesting. So without further ado, let's read off these questions. The first question is, who is my biggest role model, either someone I know or a historical figure? And, to make it even more challenging, it can't be someone from the Bible, because she already knows my confirmation saint is Saint Joseph. So, if I had to pick someone besides Saint Joseph that is my biggest role model, well, if I'm understanding the question correctly, a role model is someone that you want to be like when you get older. And I don't have a whole lot of role models nowadays, but I would say probably my biggest role model back when he was still alive was none other than my grandfather. That's why I have this picture of him and my grandma in every video I've ever filmed in this new house. Because back when my grandparents were alive was when I was still going through really bad depression. And I was also a teenager, and I happen to have far worse of a puberty than most guys do. So during that time, it was very hard for me to comprehend what it meant to be loved and to be cared about. And even though I grew up in a wonderful, supportive family, I didn't always know how to comprehend the difference between love and mandatory discipline that's needed for the children to know how to grow up. So my grandparents did a phenomenal job of showing me that they cared about me by doing tangible acts that really couldn't be misinterpreted any other way. They would say, "Paul, thank you so much for mowing the lawn. We are going to give you this money, and we insist that you take the money, and that'll help you go on your trips." Or, "I love seeing you eat, so go ahead and knock yourselves out at the restaurant." I didn't always eat as much as they thought I could, but I'd like to think my physique turned out all right, all things considered. Now, my grandparents weren't perfect people. They had a lot of problems in their past life. From what my dad's told me, he had quite a history with them, but I'd like to think that my grandfather at the very least made up for or repented of a lot of the decisions he made when my dad was a child, and really helped me realize this man really cared about me, and he really wanted me to do good in life, and he wasn't ashamed of me, he wasn't disgusted by me. And so overall, whenever I got to see my grandfather, I treated it like it was the greatest day in the world. And a lot of my mannerisms that most of you wouldn't think about actually came from him. A lot of my humor is heavily based on how he would tell jokes. Some of the sayings that I have are based on him. And even certain fashion decisions that I do are based on him, although I'll leave it to your imagination which particular choice that is, because not too many people know that, and I like the thrill of keeping people guessing. So yes, my grandfather is my biggest role model, hence why he and my grandma are in this picture. If my life had to... question 2. Let's make this official now. If my life had to be like a movie, which movie would you want your life to resemble? I don't watch a whole lot of movies, so this is honestly a really hard question. But I'd like to think that my life would resemble Avengers Infinity War. Now, just in case you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil how it turns out, but let's just say the ending is a very powerful and shocking one, and even though my life hasn't been that dramatic as far as happening exactly like Endgame did, I would say that the emotional oomph that pretty much everyone felt when seeing that scene in the theater is how I've felt about a lot of my friendships and the people in my life that have moved on. And I would just like to say that even though I've been out of depression for 5 years, sometimes wounds can sting really deeply, and I'm definitely hoping that just like the Avengers Endgame kind of sort of resolved things, that God will come around and be like, okay, Paul, let me pay you back for all of these idiots in your life, or even if they weren't idiots, the misinformed people. And somehow there will be some kind of recompense. Because it does say in the Bible that the Lord will repay everyone for what has been done. So that's why I'm not trying to seek revenge on these people, because I realize just leave it to God, let Him do the punishing, and I'll just relax and be thankful for the awesome people that do exist in my life. Number 3 is, what's an unusual habit or quirk of yours that you don't always tell people about? And she put in parentheses that I can skip the question if I get too embarrassed. So that's good. I don't want to be telling you guys every single thing about me. I think one of the most unusual quirks of mine that I don't really tell people a whole lot about is that I try really hard to create my own accent so that people won't mistake me as a standard Midwesterner. And I'm pretty sure people still are going to. Obviously, I don't sound like a Southerner, but I try very hard to put certain emphasis or lack thereof on certain letters to make sure that I sound very different than the people around me. In fact, if you take my best friend and me, who are both from the same state in the US, we talk completely differently. He pronounces things, his A's are a lot more different than mine. He usually has silent T's, whereas I sometimes do silent T's as well. That's kind of a bad habit our state gets into, but you may have noticed that I really try to accentuate the T's to sort of create my own accent, to the point where a lot of people online have even said, Paul, I can't even guess where you're from because you have such a distinct accent. So that's something that I'd like people to know, is that I'm trying very hard to clear away from too many American cliches and try to just sound just like Paul and have a Polish accent. Even though I'm hardly any Polish at all. I think I'm like 1 or 2% at most. Which is why I didn't know what a punchek, whatever the plural of punchki is, I didn't know what that was until just a couple of years ago as a result of how little Polish influence I have in my family. The fourth question is kind of borrowing off of the third one, but it's more so talking about my past, because she knows I love to reminisce. And that is, what's an unusual habit or quirk you had as a child, but grew out of now? When I was a child, I had a tendency to mimic everything that I heard, even to the point where I would embarrass people because I would be acting out my favorite scenes in movies or video games, and I didn't really necessarily have a filter as to where I acted it out. I'd just be like, you know what, I feel like pretending to be Pajama Sam, so I'm going to be Pajama Sam. And I'm pretty sure every kid is guilty of that, but I felt particularly embarrassed about it because the people around me didn't thought I was kind of weird for doing that. But that explains how I'm so good at mimicking voices. I haven't really done that a whole lot lately on this channel, but in the old days I would constantly be referencing Rumpelstiltskin or Phoenix Wright or Severus Snape. And a lot of people have wanted me to do more voice imitation videos, and I'm just waiting for the opportune moment, guys. I think it's kind of boring for me to just stand there and read from Deathly Hallows like I did the last time, so I'm hoping there could be, I don't know, maybe a cosplaying opportunity. If I end up going to Comic-Con, maybe I can just have it filmed there. Something really unique to make it so that people can say, yeah, that's totally a Polish thing to do. So yes, imitating just about everything, and I also used to be able to memorize every commercial that I ever heard. I can't do that anymore, because nowadays I don't watch enough TV to watch commercials. But yes, I used to imitate everything that I heard, and nowadays I'm getting more to the point where I'm realizing that not everyone wants to hear my imitations. The fifth and final question, assuming that I copy and pasted everything correctly, is what is one thing that I think most people do wrong in their life? Is it a technical mistake or a broader mistake in attitude? I think one thing that people do wrong, I should say most people, not all, but most people do wrong in their life, is that they don't think. I think a lot of people are too either set on either their emotions or the people around them or a combination of both, that they're not really capable of doing independent thinking. And I'm certainly guilty of this to a certain extent, because I'm the kind of guy where if I'm, say, at a job or doing something new, I need an instruction manual. I need someone to tell me step by step exactly how to follow all of the instructions. But on the other hand, if it came to a moral decision, I mean, obviously I'm Catholic, so I'm going to reference the Bible and sacred tradition and the catechism. But sometimes not everything is spelled out in the catechism. How are you supposed to know if, for example, you should take prescription medicine or not? The Bible doesn't really go in depth about that. It has a couple of passages that allude to the fact that prescription medicine is good. If you look at those who are sick have no need of or those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick, that's the best verse I can think of. But there are some things where you kind of just have to use your head. Like when the pandemic happened, if the church had 100% stuck to the rule of you must go to Mass every single Sunday or you're in mortal sin, well, that would probably cause the virus to spread and more people would die. And I'm pretty sure Jesus wouldn't want people to literally be killed by making other people unhealthy when it's already a rule in the church not to go to Mass when you're sick. So if the whole world is sick, then that gives the church grounds to cancel Mass. Of course, it's back on now, but back when the pandemic first started, that was a huge thing. Like, oh no, the Pope can't cancel Mass. What are we going to do? And so I think that was an area where the Pope had to say, okay, the Bible doesn't mention anything about pandemics. The closest it can get to is the flood that wiped out the earth. So I have to use common sense and reason to come to the conclusion that people's safety is tantamount importance if we're going to preserve future generations. So in the same way, a lot of people will resort to just like, oh, okay, everyone else is styling their hair a certain way, so I'll do it. Or, it's the cool in-crowd thing to do while not realizing that there are consequences. In my previous video, I talked about how my best friend's brother got into LSD and drugs, and now he can hardly think straight. And a lot of people think that the in-the-moment pleasures can get them out of a messed up situation, but in return, it ends up causing them more messed up situations, and even if it doesn't, then they get into this weird animalistic mindset where they're like, just one more, please, just give me more. And if they don't, then they go mad, and then they go into withdrawal, and it's like you're all of a sudden becoming a slave to your passions. If you knew how to use temperance in the first place, and control your urges, be a rational human being that's capable of thinking, instead of acting on every single impulse, maybe society wouldn't have so many of its problems. And admittedly, some people watching this are like, Paul, you have no idea what a lot of people go through. And there's no way that you can tell someone who's, say, been raped that you know the perfect solution. Maybe I don't know the perfect solution, but I at least know what solutions have been proven to end up causing temporary joy, but then they end up causing long-term side effects. And in the moment, yes, it's hard to think about what to do when you're in a panic. Everyone has their moments where they have a hard time knowing what to do in a crisis situation. But I would like to think that people have more capacity than they realize at thinking logically. A lot of times when I'm upset, yes, I'll come to a rash decision at first, but then I'll remind myself in my head, don't make the decision because you're upset. Calm down first and then make a decision. And I'd like to think that as someone who's been sexually abused, that it's definitely possible that even if you do make the wrong decisions, that you can learn from them and you can also repent. I have said and done really stupid things, especially to women in the past, blaming them for my misery. But I've made great pains to make sure that all the women in my life know that I'm sorry and that I've changed. So even if you are the type of person who's given in to, say, porn or sex or drugs or something really bad that could be an addiction or a sin, that doesn't have to be the end of it. You don't have to let your life be ruined. You can grow beyond it. You can make a difference. In the same way that I'm now going swimming constantly as opposed to even being afraid to just show my leg hair, you guys are certainly capable of doing that too. How you go about it, that's probably up to you, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to think it's over just because you made a catastrophic mistake. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I do hope I was able to answer the questions sufficiently. If there's anything I missed, if you need clarification, if I once again showed my knack of not being politically correct, let me know in the comments section. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and let's hope no one will ever forget that my grandparents were probably one of the main reasons I stayed happy for as long as I did before succumbing to the depths of despair prior to recovering from depression. Bye!